Okay, we are 6 weeks on since launch, so where are we at with the Garmin EDGE 850 today? So I've continued to use the Garmin EDGE 850 bike computer on almost every ride since it arrived. As a cyclist myself, I'm interested in being across any changes, updates, enhancements of this device, which had a pretty soft landing after a much anticipated release. Overall, I've been relatively happy with the EDGE 850. It's basically a smaller version of the EDGE 1050. My use cases being to record rides, data logging from power meters, bike radar testing, free ride navigation using the map screen, and just generally having a better time on the bike, knowing where the climbs start and where they finish, and which way the wind is blowing. Add to that live track that starts automatically, mobile alerts and notifications from my phone, media control from music and podcasts playing on that phone. Like, there's hundreds of things that these units do and do well. So why did this unit have such a hard time at launch? Well, there's two reasons for that. Price increase, which is a common theme across all new bike tech, and secondly, the battery life being less than half of that of its predecessor, the 840. Price is a buy once and you're done kind of thing. Once you're over that hurdle, it's a non-issue. But battery life, on the other hand, well, that's something that you deal with on every second of every ride for the lifespan of the product. So it's an important attribute. Now, before I dig into where things are at, this is not a comprehensive overview of all the features on this. This is simply my take as a cyclist using this device extensively over the last few weeks. I've ridden over 1,000 Ks on the bike with this. I'm across all the updates. I've tried all the tricks to squeeze the most out of this. And beta firmware version 29.21 landed just a few hours ago. I've already clocked up 3 hours on the bike with that today. Pulling up a quick post-launch overview of what's new and what's taken place. ConnectIQ apps and data fields have been updated to support the EDGE 550 and 850 devices. Garmin have opened their public beta program on the EDGE 550 and 850. The latest public firmware for these devices default to auto for GPS and GNSS, possibly for battery conservation. The weather widget is still tucked away and still crashing on me. We'll go through that in just a few moments. I had a screen blinking issue with this. Secure Bluetooth and power recording was a little sticky, and I have some interesting real-world battery life numbers, plus the battery estimate being very, very wrong. We'll look into that in just a few moments too. Now, before getting stuck into those, just a quick note that TrailForks 2025.20 has been released this week, and that's across all EDGE units that support TrailForks maps on the units themselves. Now, the fastest method to get any map updates is via a USB cable and to sync with Garmin Express on Mac or a PC. As mentioned just before, the latest public firmware for these units defaults the GPS setting to auto, which is a little worse as it auto pauses in tunnels. Now, last week I had the 1050 and an 850 on the bike riding through this tunnel. Yes, the bell works fine on both of those, but that's the 850 auto pausing. Ding ding indeed. So defaulting to auto for that is effectively at the opposite end of the feature spectrum than their 5Hz GPS GNSS mode. So there's some balancing happening there with position logging versus battery burn. Also in beta firmware, Garmin have introduced a screen double tap function to ring the bell. That seems to work on any screen during a ride. Although that function is much better mapped to the bonus buttons on SRAM and Shimano Di2 units. In beta firmware, Garmin have also added the ability to share timing gates via Garmin Share. Now, that was a huge miss at the launch of the EDGE MTB, which was the first unit to support timing gates, where once you'd created the course, the only way to share that was via USB cable. That can now be shared directly from the units that support that. Onto the ConnectIQ apps and data fields that you can add to these units. Now, at launch and first look reviews, you won't see any ConnectIQ add-ons, as these need to be compiled to support new devices. Independent developers usually get these devices a few weeks after launch, so there's always a delay of a week or two before we see those arrive. Now, the top 3 add-ons that I use on the EDGE units are My Bike Radar Traffic, Winfield, and Map Dashboard. All of those have been updated to support these new units. They all work as expected, and I have videos on installing and configuring each of those. I'll link to those in the video description below. Next up is the public beta has opened for the EDGE 550 and the 850. Garmin do have an open public beta that anybody can join for a lot of their devices. So if you want to be on the cutting edge, so to speak, or close to for updates and enhancements, you can enroll your devices via Garmin Connect Web. You can also opt out at any time too. Now, the weather widget, one of the features that was promoted at launch of this device. I honestly forgot it existed for a few weeks. It is so tucked away and really not that accessible while riding. Using something like Winfield or any other ConnectIQ wind or weather add-ons can be placed right on the map, always under your nose. They are useful. And the new native weather widget still crashes in my location. That's with firmware 29.21. And it crashes on all X50 units. So there really is something up there. Another concern I've had with the 850 was a screen blinking issue. It's happening less and less with newer beta firmware. Hopefully it's resolved by now. I didn't notice it today, but it was concerning for the last few weeks, where the screen would switch off for a few seconds and then switch back on. It looked everything like a reboot or crash, but it wasn't. It would recover, but it really wasn't ideal. Something I've covered off in my review of the new Garmin Rally Power Meter pedals was that secure Bluetooth data recording of power results in sticky watts with these units. That's really not ideal. Garmin are looking into this, but for now I'm having to stick with AMP+. Now on to arguably the hero feature of the 850, and that is screen brightness. Now like the 1050, the 850 screen is brilliant. It's bright, it's crisp, it's all the things, but I'm seeing it behave a little differently than the 1050 outdoors. With both the 850 and the 1050 set to auto screen brightness, the 850 remains a lot brighter than the 1050 when moving in and out of sunlight. And I've no doubt this is contributing to a higher than necessary battery burn rate. This has been reported to Garmin. They've had me run a few tests with the ambient light sensor, and that appears fine when tested on the bench with a torch. So I don't know really where this is at right now, but the 850 is still brighter than the 1050 outside when using auto brightness when running in and out of shadows. So this leads me to something that has been debated a lot online, and that is real-world battery life or usage between charging, where there's not really much to debate as it's just a number. However, the expectations of performance can differ. Starting off with something that had someone tripping over themselves to disagree with my battery burn data, and that is this, the estimated battery burn time on this screen. That's wrong. That's also wrong. That's wrong as well. And that's wrong too. Those looking closely would have spotted the pattern there. Now this feature showing the estimated battery life in hours needs to be removed. That is very, very misleading. So after 50 hours of ride time with the 850 using auto brightness, the Edge 850 runtime stabilizes for me at around 11 hours for most rides, regardless of the ride length. The discharge curve is very linear, so there's no aggressive throttling or early drop-off. And locking the screen brightness to anything lower than 40% is not a solution that works for me. It's just not bright enough for my ride conditions. On one ride, I did disable all Connect IQ apps and data fields, and the runtime then spiked to 13.4 hours. Again, only one ride. That could have been condition dependent with the brightness outdoors on the day. The Edge 1050 in comparison averaged twice the runtime of the 850, so 22 hours average versus 11 hours average. Other data points from other units that I've had on those rides. One ride with the Karoo 3 resulted in 13.56 hours of burn time, and two rides with the Edge 840 configured exactly the same fields, same screens, same everything as the 850. Today's estimated battery burn on the 840 was 28.36 hours. The other day was 24.9 hours. So there's my battery burn data to date, and I really hope they can squeeze a lot more out of this unit, because the 850 is causing me to have battery anxiety. I've come home from a number of rides where I was surprised to see something like only 16% remaining on the 850, while the 1050 is nowhere near that. And the 840, well, that's still fresh. Other times I've rolled out of the garage not thinking about it. I've looked down and raised an eyebrow at just how low the battery percent was on the 850. But here we are. That's the end user experience, and it is at a different level than I'd hoped with the new Edge unit. Oh, and before I go, two quick bonus rounds, and this is with the latest beta firmware released just a few hours ago. The gear usage data overview as part of the ride summary does appear to be broken. It doesn't show gear ratios when tapping between ratios and gears. And finally, here's one that caught me off guard today.
Holy f***. Both of them rebooted?
Yes, I had both the 850 and the 840 spontaneously reboot at the same time. Now do note these are both on 29.21 public beta firmware. They were both fully updated with maps and Connect IQ fields, which could be to blame for this. So we can't draw too many conclusions other than it had me standing in the middle of the bush waiting for them to both reboot and recover before continuing my ride. Alrighty, so that's it for now, and there are some ups and downs to be had being an early adopter. Like as I said in the intro, there are hundreds of things that these units do and do well, and there are things that I like about them. However, as I've presented here, there's a few things that could use some miscellaneous updates and fixes. So for now, I'll keep riding with it, I'll keep updating it, and I'll keep reporting back with future updates to see how things are tracking. And with that, thanks for watching.